Parry Talks, episode 51. Once again, we're hopping around the country, hopping around the world. We're going over this week. Wow, we've been on the weekly podcast as well. It says a lot about my grind at the moment. Um, but this week we are hopping to our noisy neighbors over in Naarm. And we've got a very special guest today, someone I've admired heavily for a long time, and seeing him flourish now as a producer, doing his own thing under his own terms is super special. He's recently released one of my favorite dance songs of the year, putting it in every single mix. You know, when the house parties come back for that little stint, it's going to be everywhere. And I'm so excited for that to happen, especially in the live space. Um, the song's called Silk. It's out now via Steel City Dance Discs. But this isn't about me. This isn't about my fanning. This is about my boy Mocta, my man. How you doing?
Good, man. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm hanging in there, I think. I think that's the universal response at the moment. Just living. But yeah, Silk is out. What responses, or what do you think's been the most rewarding part of, having this song out in the world at the moment?
Definitely just being able to just kind of share my experience. I've been coming to terms in the last couple of years that it's I've had like a huge delayed response, when something happens to you and you don't really think about it. But in the last couple of years, I feel like a lot of things that have had happened to me in the past are only just really started to brew, in the last couple of years. And I feel like a lot of that has a lot to play with like my music now, because I'm like going back to my roots, really finding my feet, and especially my sound, which is plays a big part of this project.
Definitely. And I think in terms of how it's come to be, because like you've hinted already there at a lot of reflection, was it reflection, realization, finding personal identity, and then the Moctar project was born? Or was it you started thinking about having the Moctar project, and then through that you started reflecting a lot and coming to where you are now?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's it. Honestly, came from me trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So drawing, I come from polygraphia, my old project, and then from there I went into polish at collaboration with Winston Surfshirt. So I've always had this, kind of like a background of really like a hip hop, neo soul and bit of disco funk type of side. But you know, when I started thinking about a new project, I had like a lot of trouble trying to make anything work that made sense for me. I went for a lot of different type of demos that sound so different, but at the end of the day, like I always was trying to slowly, put in, Arabic stuff. My dad is a composer, and his main role is a conductor for orchestras. So this guy, he's worked with so many like amazing artists in the Middle East. So he's got like this catalog of just like really cool Arabic, sounding music, which made me be like, fuck, I got like this gold mine of shit that I can actually sample. So I tried to like force that into it. And that's like where it started, for me being like, oh fuck, okay, this is actually going somewhere and I'm really enjoying it. And during that time, I really started to notice like, DJ played more, and, being able to just like figure out like just like this whole like new world that I've been just like kind of neglecting, because like I was so distracted with this whole Triple J stuff for such a long time. And when I say Triple J, like there's just like this whole genre of like, it's just like there's just like a certain way Triple J works, and they're an amazing platform. But I think for me, I was always pigeonholed. Like I had this thought process of like, oh, how am I gonna like, make it onto Triple J rotation? Like I'm not thinking about music anymore in that sense. I'm like got so distracted about like Triple J that I feel like it drove me in such a far direction, and like I just didn't focus so much about like what I actually needed. And yeah, like this project was just kind of like a therapy session, like within myself to figure out that. And yeah, it's like a big journey,
Definitely.
come to terms with like all those type of sounds.
And we'll dig into it as well. But I think one important note to think about that I'm thinking about now is was like deep driven club music always a part of your personal taste, or do you think that you found that again recently, or it's resurfaced? What drove you to head into that lane, which is like almost the entire opposite, even though dance music, but in terms of in that realm, it's like the total opposite of what might get commercial or national radio play. So when did heading in that direction come into the, strategic thinking of it all?
So like I started off as a DJ, funny enough. And so like I've always was really heavily into like dance music and DJing. And as I like was progressing as like a musician, like an artist, like that's when I started to go more to the live part of it. So yeah, like it's only just up until like I had time to really think about you know more than just like Polygraphia once that ended. That's when I started to like dwell back, going back to like what I knew, and like just forgot how much I actually loved it. Like I've always been like a huge fan of so many people like James Blake and Mount Kimby, who like those guys started off as DJs and like eventually made it live. So I was always was just like drawn to that element. But with what I want now, I'm just like okay, I don't want to do anything live. Like I feel like I've done enough of that. And there's probably like no better feeling like just being able to just tour with just a USB, which is really appealing as well. But yeah, like it definitely resurfaced in the last couple of years, and it's just all I do now. And yeah.
Perfect. Sorry, and for the listeners as well, if you ever feel like there are gaps between me and Mocta speaking, it's because we don't want to interrupt. Like it's obvious, it's easy on Zoom to just like be like, I think he's finished talking, so I'm just gonna hop in, and then he's not. So yeah, if there's any gaps, that's why. I think one big funny thing about that, and you quote James Blake and Matt Kimby, um, is that people in underground dance communities always forget that like these big dance names in the more commercial world are still like a lot of them do come from really strong underground dance roots and have really strong tastes in like incredible, club music that is independent and is niche, but their outlet is just different. Like, and people just like misconflate that, or like they just like it's so easy to judge an artist based on what they're making and assume their taste.
Yeah, totally. Like Jamie XX, like another guy. Like that guy is still like DJing, but like yeah, he kind of like comes from like foundation is club music. You know.
It's the power of club music, man. um, I think I think Silk is a great, yet it almost sums up everything we've spoken about already, because it is a club banger at the start, but it does obviously get super atmospheric and quite reflective for me in the way that I engage with it. Um, so is that a similar reasoning why Silk was the perfect introduction for the Mocta project?
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to be able to use those elements of like taking the track and making it like blend in as a journey. Like you're not just starting off with just like the same elements. Like I really wanted to just be like, okay, let's just like really kick this track off and like get people's attention, and like gradually just slowly just get just really melodic, and start introducing like actual like live instruments into it, because I find that like I'm still drawn to a lot of the stuff, and it's just something I'm just used to as well. So I wanted to take advantage of that.
Definitely. And back onto those, earlier projects. Um, on a positive note, was there like a beauty in the creative freedom of, like almost the anonymity of it, or writing for others? Um, what are those things, from your songwriting background help now about the way you make and create music as Mokta?
I think it like I'm not limited to just sticking to one sound. Like I think producing for people was like a really good thing for me, because when I was in polygraphia, I did tend to just I'll make a demo and the next day I'd make something else and it'll sound slightly off. Like it didn't really fit that genre. And being able to write for people gave me that space to be like, oh shit, like I can actually just splurge out in like, hip hop, or like, something that's a bit more rocky or whatever. And like I really enjoyed that. So with this project, like I don't think I'm gonna give myself any limitations. I think I'm just gonna give myself this open book to be able to just, if I feel like doing this today, like that's the direction it's gonna go.
Definitely. And with that, was there like a specific moment or a period, and especially like launching a project in these times is super hectic, but was there a specific moment or period in that transition that you realized like now's the time, that like what was that moment like when you realized, yeah, like this is what my musical project wants to be, this is what Mocta sounds like was it a song, was it a moment of reflection, what was that trigger point?
Um, yeah, Silk. Silk was the first one. Silk was just like one of those tracks where I'm like, oh fuck, like I think I can actually, like I feel like this is going somewhere. And for a while, like when I was sitting on it for a few months just to myself, I hadn't sent it to anyone. I was still quite hesitant about like, I wasn't too sure if this would still work, you know? Um, and I think it only made sense to others when I, really started to describe like the meaning behind the tracks, because most of my work is like I try to really visualize something, with it. So like if it's something that's quite important to me, it needs to have like, a certain video to go with it, because I don't think those type of elements would really bring that track to life as well. So like I try to really make sure that, if something that's gonna, not be so clubby, or like, something that's just gonna be quite chill, the meaning behind it is also just going to be just as powerful.
Definitely. And I like, this might be a tricky question to ask, or like a weird one to ask, but do you ever, even so early on, you've revealed a lot about yourself and the way Silk reflects that. Is it challenging to like put your heart on the line and describe a song instead of just letting it sit in the ether? Like, was that process of writing that Instagram caption like a difficult or challenging one, or is it natural to just be like, just to wear the heart on the sleeve and just to give it all and put it all out there?
Honestly, like if you asked me that a year ago, I would have said it would have been really difficult, just because I, I I find it really difficult to talk about myself or like my experiences. My experience. It's only just until recently that I've been able to do that. So I've been able to like build up this confidence like during this project, and like going back to like saying like it was kind of like a therapy session to me. Um, you know, being able to just slowly like hack into it and just like accepting a lot of things, but also like knowing that I can use this into my advantage, and throw it out to the world into like a positive way, was also something that like really drove me, because I'm quite passionate about this project and a lot of the meaning behind it.
Definitely. And I think Let's throw it all the way back now. We're like, I'm always like, holy shit! Like I just get lost in the sauce, you could say, because it's like we're just flying. Um, let's throw it all the way back in this question. There's no pressure to answer it in full detail, like with specific moments or anything, just whatever you're comfortable to share. But what things externally do you think in Australian culture, either wide or locally for you, led to that suppression or resistance of you finding your identity throughout your upbringing? You know, like what specific actions or, you know, the Australian narrative sort of just like suppressed that and condensed that and contained it for you?
Um, when I think about it, it's not a hard question to answer. Like it's would be the Cronulla riots. Living in the Sutherland Shire, you know, so that to me really did change a lot for me. And most of those experiences, like I actually didn't realize how bad it was. You know, like sometimes I forget, like which is weird, but I think that has a lot to do with like me suppressing that because I always played it off like it was just like yeah, like that happened. Like I didn't really think much of it because most of my friends, like you know, none of us really talked about it. Like it was like a very unspoken thing. Like I didn't have like a group of people where I can talk like could be able to like express. So I did suppress a lot of that and got used to that idea, you know, and I don't think it affected me as much as I realize now because I just played it off like it was like whatever. But yeah, like, you know, as I got older, I think that's when it started to resurface, you know, as an adult, you know, things started to like become real and, you know, and I'd be like, oh, fuck, that happened. Or like, you know, like I start thinking about things. But yeah, that's the big realization, you know,
I
from
think,
definitely that experience.
I think, I think in Australian, like the Australian narrative of culture, it's, I don't want to say, for lack of a better word, slept on in terms of it was such a critical moment for Australia to reflect on multiculturalism and people of migrant backgrounds and the fact that they are as Australian as some, you know, surf lifesaver on Cronulla Beach. And I think there was a big conversation that needed to be had and that I think people are really having now for some reason that, you know, like maybe just the way politically things have changed about culture and identity, but it's underrated in terms of how negative the impact of that was. And like, especially for someone that was a bit younger that might have missed it in its full, you know, brunt, we still need to be having those conversations as young people because, you know, how much has really changed because it's been such a short amount of time.
Like, you know, growing up in the Shire, like I can tell you, like a lot has changed. Like a lot
All
of
right.
people that I grew up with have changed, but it's still not like close to what it should be, you know, like it is still a lot of room for work. And, you know, I think I do see that change. And I've seen the progression in Sutherland Shire. But yeah, like, you know, back when I was young, like I was the only Egyptian kid, you know, I didn't like all I was more focused about is like, you know, trying to be someone I'm not to fit in. And like it worked in some levels, you know, like, you know, I got really into surfing and, you know, I got really into like growing my fringe out and like, you know, I really tried hard to find like this identity. And yeah, I didn't realize how much it was, you know, such a struggle for me because, you know, I didn't have like a great time like going to school and like people would ask me why and I couldn't really answer that because I didn't know why.
Yeah.
Or you know, my experiences were just like different. And a lot of people like who I'm still friends with to this day. Like I could tell they knew something was up, but they also couldn't understand, you know.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Um, how much of that do you think? And there's obviously a big silver lining to this, um, of course, that we'll talk about after as well. How much of it do you think, like processes and moments like that in your youth, almost like delayed? Do you think that it was a big part in delaying your realization and becoming Mokta as a musician and as a person? Or do you think that it would have taken you this time regardless to get to this level of realization and reflection?
Um, I think it was pretty delayed, just because I was so caught up in like being like Australian in that sense of, you know, fitting in, that I was so like that I just became this person, you know, like a, you know, I was so different to like whenever I would hang out with all my cousins or whatever. I was like the black sheep, you know, like you know, I spoke differently, like I dressed differently, like, you know, um, like, you know, even they would like make fun of me. So like I was just like getting it from like both worlds, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. Like I'm trying to fit in, but yeah, like, you know, just to be able to accept that, like I hated Arabic music, you know, funny enough. I didn't like it because I was just like, it's not English. Like I was embarrassed by it, you know. It was just, I was definitely suppressing like a lot about that, and I feel like I'm just like relearning everything, like going back to like all the years that I've like missed at, you know, appreciating my culture. And this for me, it's like I'm like a crazy new experience in my life. Like I feel like a lot of these feelings that I'm going through now is actually really exciting, because I'm just coming at it from a different angle.
Definitely. And to tap more into that as well, um, is there still, and like it's weird to say, obviously there's like, there is no real positive to come out of an experience like that, but it must be incredibly awesome to reflect on and find culture now with a wiser and, you know, stronger set of eyes, having experienced so much and taking that forward through your music. um Obviously probably has positively impacted the way you're experiencing it now, I assume.
Yeah, you know, like I feel good, you know, like and for the first time, like I feel so comfortable, like being able to just, like, it's like, I'm going to use this as an example. It's literally the feeling of like when you buy something new and you're like, fuck yeah, like you feel good, you know, like you're going out and you're wearing it for the first time and you feel different, you know, things look different for some reason. And it gives you like that confidence, like to just like be out there and like kind of show it off, whatever, like that. That's literally how I feel like in my own skin now. Like I just, like I feel like everything I do now is just, I've got no shame behind it, you know, like I'm just feeling great about it.
Definitely. I think I think important note to make from my perspective, and I'll open the floor for you to agree or disagree with it as well after I say it, is that even though you're telling your Egyptian story and your heritage story and your personal identity story, I think what people need to understand as well, which is so important about stories like this from people of migrant backgrounds, is that you're telling a fundamentally Australian story. Like your story is an Australian story. And do you see that um, as a part of your, you know, and you might not have thought about this, but is that the impact you want to make with the Moctar project, to show and to flaunt that like this is like a new Australia. This is what being Australian is actually about, and it's embracing other cultures.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you know, even though, um, you know, growing up in the Shire was so traumatic, it was actually such like one of the best times of my life, you know, as well. Like it's like my upbringing was just like equally as just bad and good, you know, like I love being Australian. I love everything about Australia. Like like this is my home. You know, I feel so Australian as much as I feel Egyptian. You know, so yeah, like, you know, being able to just like reflect, you know, my past, like I wouldn't change. You know, I wouldn't prefer to just be just like, you know, Egyptian. You know, this is such a big part of who I am.
Definitely. And yeah, I think it's super interesting because um we're seeing this, I don't know, maybe it's just a timing thing or a cultural change, but we're seeing a lot of diverse artists telling diverse stories, especially, and I think the dance community is sort of lagging with this just because of like it takes a lot of privilege to even be able to be involved in a dance community, which in itself is a whole other hour conversation. But especially in hip hop and the R&B space within Sydney or Melbourne and Brisbane, we're seeing a lot more diverse voices come out and enter that Australian music space. And I think it's really changing the identity of how the world sees Australia, because so much of what the world saw Australia was like Tame Impala, which is like as just like chill white people making guitar music. But I think the art side of it is so important because that's the face of Australia for so many things. Which, and you're part of that story, and you're just as much a part of that story as like 1-4 is, which is I think super exciting and what I'm so proud of about this project, because you know, like being a Greek kid trying to work in like the music industry or engage with Australian music to go see live music, I had to compromise my taste and myself because I was like, hang on, there's no one that looks like me at these festivals, performing at the festivals or being in the crowd at the festivals. So it's super interesting to see that it's changing, and the focus of what, you know, a city like Sydney looks like is changing because the arts are pushing it so far forward. And I think the dance community still has a lot of work to do in that world, but I
Yeah.
think with stories like yours, I think it's pushing it forward.
Yeah. You know, it's definitely like you notice it, you know, like you know, I've been going to festivals for like a few years now, and you notice it, you know. Um, and yeah, like you're right, like there, you know, those guys out in the West, like, you know, like One Crew, and there's so many like, you know, amazing artists coming out of that side right now, and they're embracing their sound, you know, there's Sampler and, you know, a lot of those type of people where I'm like, I get inspired by that, you know. Um, and I think it's cool because, like, you know, the more of that is happening, like I have noticed more people like come out and just embrace their culture as well, which is awesome to see.
Why do you think, and like this like we could get either philosophical here or the answer could just be I have no idea. But why do you think the past couple of years has seen that upbringing of like new diverse Australian music? Do you think it's like a wide, like a big macro cultural change of like accepting these sounds, or is it more like a fundamental thing like access to technology and stuff like that?
Uh, you know, like yeah, like social media technology has a big part of, you know, connecting people. So like being able to have access to see what's going on right now, you know, like on the other side of the globe, it's easy, and people have access to able to just do their thing and, you know, upload a video or whatever. I find that, like, you know, times are changing. You know, I'm looking around, you know, Melbourne now. I'm noticing more like, you know, Egyptian restaurants. You know, I could literally count like two or three, you know, Egyptian restaurants like back when I was a kid. But like there is just like certain trends that are popping off, and you know, it's like, oh, it's cool to, like, you know, do a certain thing that wasn't cool like 10 years ago. Um, that's definitely, you know, I think it's just like, you know, people are just coming around to it. People are more, you know, open to things, and there's like less shame behind it as well. And I feel like it's cool to be different as well. You know, like I feel like I have this, I guess, like I don't know, like I feel like I have an advantage for some reason at the moment, just because for so long, like I didn't really feel like I felt like I had an opportunity. or like people would hear me. But right now, like people are listening. And I feel like I can, tell my story.
Definitely. But I'll challenge you on that, because I don't think it's an advantage in identity, or like just because you are different. I think it's always going to be just owning your identity no matter what it is. And if you're willing to put that identity show and wear it on your sleeve, like you could be, you know, and like this isn't a criticism at all, you could be the whitest person in Australia. And if you wear that identity in your sleeve and you target that market and you kill it, and you're relatable and you own that identity and you criticize that identity and you reflect on that identity, people are going to draw to that as well. So I think there's a big uprising in people just loving and embracing and understanding their own identity, which is, I think, where you're winning, rather than it being, you're just different.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think like, when I was saying disadvantage in a sense, like I just don't know anyone else, like a lot of people in Australia, doing this. Like I wish there were more people who were Middle Eastern wanting to like get into DJing, or like wanting to like start, writing like crazy bangers, or like whatever, anything in the music industry. Like I just don't see a lot of that. Like maybe because like, like we are definitely disadvantaged, like in that sense, like in where you're coming from, and like, but I think it's a good time, like more than ever, to really, push for that, just because like, it's getting better. It's like, it's hard because like I feel like it's hard for me to like, talk this out, because I'm like listening to myself and I'm like, maybe I'm also just playing this like lightly, over the matter. But I'm trying to see, the positives in like what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Do you think that was a big part of the reflection in creating Mocta, almost like an assessment of what your impact could be, in terms of, if I do this, did you ever think about, sorry, I'll frame it as a question. Do you ever think about, if I do this, there might be some kid watching in Blacktown that is super into this stuff, and then hopefully I can change his perspective of what a DJ looks like or what an artist looks like? Was that ever in your thought process, or is it a natural consequence now that you're super grateful for?
Like I haven't been noticing it until recently, about that. Like I went into doing this like with like I don't give a fuck attitude. Like, I went in this like full blast. Like I was like, I don't care what people think about me. I'm just gonna do me. I'm gonna represent who I am. Like you take it, or like when I was sending these demos to people, I literally like attached this, like this is what it's gonna be, like nothing's changing.
Yeah.
Like this is it. Like I'm gonna have like full 100%, creativity, like creative ideas behind it. Like I don't want anyone to like have to come in and tell me what to do. And everyone's like, yeah, cool. Like, I came in like really defensive, like, like, and I was like, yeah, sick, do it. I'm like,
you're gonna like it, and you have to like it.
Yeah. But it's not until recently, like I've been getting like messages from people, and people sharing their stories, and that's what's become real. Now I'm like, okay, like I had no idea. Like I would be playing, this little like playing this type of narrative for people as well.
Definitely. And we're sidetracking now, because I remembered just recently you mentioned restaurants.
Yeah.
And I just want your thoughts. You don't have to, you don't have to answer this for legal reasons. You don't have to answer it. But Cairo, Newtown.
Yeah.
Is it overrated, in your opinion? Or do you think it hits the mark?
No, okay, look, people have asked me this. Like,
look, I know that's a stereotypical question. That's a shocker question.
I'm happy to answer this. Look, I don't know much about the background of who's running the show. I think the person that's who started is Egyptian, and he just kind of like he just started this, and he's got people in there running the restaurant. But yes, it is really good. Like it's pretty authentic. Just because if you ever go in there, they're actually using like proper, the actual instruments, like proper pots, like that all of that's from Egypt.
Perfect.
Like it's just they're doing it right, and yeah, it's I think they've hit it like perfect. Just like even the falafel, like everything.
I'm about to get blasted now because I know everyone listening and all my friends listening, and rightly so, are going to be like, Parry gets an Egyptian guy on his podcast, asks about Cairo. It's like, come on, like.
No, it's so fun because like look, I get annoyed and angry when I do. I'm not gonna mention half of these places, but like, man, it kills me, to watch some places just hijack, our culture and just want to make a buck or whatever. Like it frustrates me.
And I think reflecting now again, I think the reason I asked it is because I get super defensive about Greek restaurants as well. Like if that shit doesn't slap me, it's not like if it's not like like Greek food in Australia is not Greek food most of the time. Like 90% of the time. Like anyway, that's my.
It's fine. Like I get it. It's frustrating. And I feel like I'm like growing more like frustrated as time's going because it's just like this huge clap thing going on right now, and some people like see that a gap of like an opportunity to take advantage of something, and they would do it where like I feel like most families who have been around for like since the 80s doing the exact same thing, they're just probably not they probably just don't have like marble floors or like a cool like little like setup, or they don't have like a cool playlist playing in the background or whatever. I don't know, but like
Yeah.
where I'm going.
Yeah. Well, I reckon we've spoken about at least half an hour about identity, and I think that was always my intention with the podcast so far. But as always, and of course, this is this horrible way to flip the switch now. But that's two things about on Parry Talks and our audience, I think, which we always love to dive into. It's identity, and then of course the club music. And I think now to transition, the Silk is out on Steel City Dance Discs. How important was it finding a right home like that? What do you love about the Steel City Dance Disc people, or why do you think they're the people that could best get that message across?
I think like all of those guys, like more rap and those guys are always been killing it, right? They just have like this amazing ability of just like getting shit that they want out, and they just smash things out like constantly. Like they have like so many releases and such a huge following overseas and here at the moment. And I know with those guys, like they're so passionate about their record label, and wanting to be able to just like also, I think it's like a good time for all of us to be able to expand as well. As a record label for them, I think, progression is super important. And they've pretty much have been nailing it for the last couple of years. And when they were interested, in having me on and like why, they wanted me on, like I felt, they were just more hyped on it than I was, and like I love that about them. And like being able to like work with them has been such a pleasure. And I've always been such a huge like fan of Grab and like what he's achieved. So like, yeah, I don't know, like it's just like I just feel good being able to like be a part of it.
Definitely. And like if the labels, not to get too industry, but if the label's more excited than you, then that's like a pretty good indication of like this might
Yeah,
work. um
yeah, yeah.
and it is rare to find that, like genuinely rare to find that sort of attitude. So it's great that it's found a home. um Also want to talk about moving to Melbourne. This isn't a shade on Sydney at all, but you know, how important was that moving to Melbourne? Maybe it might have just been a change of scenery for you to get more creative, or was it the people you met? Just what things about changing city and changing to a city like Melbourne helped you embrace and flourish as a creative?
I've always loved Melbourne, and I've always been saying I was gonna move regardless. But during this time of being in the middle of like finding finding the Mocta project, I just felt drawn to Melbourne and being able to just finish music for some reason. I don't even know if that's like a placebo or like or whatever, but I was just like, well, for some reason it's going really well here. I'm just going to stick to that. You know, the ball's rolling. I don't know if it's just in my head or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because I wasn't doing anything different. Like I'm still like in a room writing music. It could be anywhere, but I just felt like, you know, something good about it. And I really wanted to also like get into DJing a lot more. And like in Sydney, like as you know, like there's only so much that you can actually do. You know, there's like a threshold like at the moment, and it's definitely hard. It was definitely really hard for me to like be able to just go out and just like do something, or even just watch, you know, people play, and like being able to like go out to a rave or like, you know, to the clubs, like that's also like a big part of like me getting inspired as well, you know. So Melbourne for me just seemed like that access that I, you know, and it seemed like the right time for me to do that.
Definitely. um and like obviously there's a big there's a lot of personal growth and personal finding, but I think to properly facilitate that, um you need great people either next to you, like supporting that and reflecting on that with you from a supportive point of view, and also like people that you look up to that, you know, help that process come along, that you could have foresight and like someone to look up to as an inspiration. Generally just with finding yourself. So who are those people, those figures that you think that you just want to give a shout out to that just helped you along that journey, and without them might not have been the same?
Um, yeah, Jared, like DJ played, like I keep been, you know, telling people that he's been like a big part. He probably doesn't even know that. I don't think I've even told him. But like he's like inspired me so much, you know, yeah, to do what I'm doing now, just because of like watching him do it, you know. And like I was like, oh, you can actually do this, like
Yeah.
that's like mad. But yeah, you know, DJ played, and you know, Josh, like, you know, set one even, like, you know, it's just like just to be able to have those guys, like, you know, a part of like this journey has been like so helpful, you know.
It's all about the community.
Totally, 100%.
um and well, this has been very rapid 40 minutes, 40 couple of minutes, so we'll start wrapping it up. But I think an important last note to end on before we start asking silly questions is, um what do you think? And like, you can just talk as freely and as glossingly as you want about this, but what's so empowering and powerful about DJing for you and returning to that medium? You know, what were those things that you're missing from it that you did just want to re-engage with and just dive all the way back in? So like, just pretty much the question is, what do you love about DJing?
So what was that?
What do you love about DJing?
Oh man, everything. Just like being able to just drop whatever you want at any moment. Yeah, you know, like and just having that freedom. Like something about DJing is just like you just feed off people. Like, you just get like the reaction you get off people just has the ability to just give you like all these like superpowers for some reason, and that's like the biggest part. Like, like, look, I could be at like anywhere. I could literally just be at the Sheaf DJing,
Yeah.
literally playing like top 40 bangers or whatever. And I would be like enjoying myself so much just because of how people are reacting. It doesn't matter what I'm playing. Like that's not the thing to me. Like I don't mind what it is, but like it's just being able to like watch people have like such a good time that really hits the spot.
Definitely. And also, before we start asking silly questions, I'll say that so many times.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you on behalf of me and our community for this conversation. It's really important, really special. So we are very grateful for that. And, sharing stories and sharing experiences isn't the easiest thing for a lot of people. So we do really appreciate that. I say that now to say you've had a big night, you've woken up the next morning, and you're picking up a takeaway feed. And I'm talking big chain takeaway, like, the big dogs. And I don't know if you eat meat or not, which might impact this question. But what's the GOAT takeaway, do you think? Just generally, like,
The GOAT takeaway. Oh man. Look, anything that just like, look, this is easy. It's just easy. Like everyone's probably thinking it right now, but like you cannot go wrong with a kebab. I tell you right now.
correct answer.
But like, in saying that, like, I wish I was in Sydney for Bubba's Place.
Crazy.
But like those guys, yeah, killing it right now. So if you guys have a chance, please go down to Bubba's Place because that is the go-to of all places right now. And if I could choose to eat that for the rest of my life, it would be those guys right now. Like they're just whatever they touch. Yeah. So shout out to those guys.
Massive shout out. And that wasn't planned. Close friends of the show. Massive shout out. Sponsor this podcast.
Bubba's Place, please.
And last question. If you had to nominate one person that deserves an interview, deserves to have their story told, someone you want to throw in the deep end on Parry Talks, who should I interview? Who'd be great to chat to? Who deserves this platform?
Ooh.
And we can go global now as well.
Oh, yeah, global.
We can go anywhere because of the power of Zoom, as they say.
Man, it's true. Man, I just want to represent anyone who's like, coming from the Middle East, right now. And there's a lot of like amazing producers out there, and I need to like make sure I'm pronouncing this right. So, okay, so there's this guy over from Cairo, who is an absolute machine, and you need to get into him. But he's called Free Faz, and I say that in a way because I know it's pronounced differently.
Yeah.
But when we when you read it out, it's just gonna be Free Faz. But that guy is just like an amazing producer out of Cairo. Just like real like distorted like bass, and like the way the use of his like his percussion, it's just like next level. It's like listening to the future of club music, and this guy's like 10 years ahead. So I will send you every single like, information that you need from this guy. So
you are Naarm Mocta.
Yeah.
Perfect. Parry Talks, Mocta, thank you once again. If you're listening to it now, go stream Silk, go buy it on Bandcamp, of course, if you can. And importantly as well, this Thursday, on if you're listening to this like in the first couple of days it's released, Thursday night, 6 to 8 p.m. Mocta and his house hopping on Nomad Radio for a very cheeky guest mix. It's going to be fire. It's going to be energy. I've heard rumors about this mix for weeks, for months. But yeah, very grateful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, man.